Well, good morning. Here it is. It's Friday. We've made it to the end of another week, and of course today is January the 17th. And I hope you had a great Thursday. I hope you had a great day. I hope that you're able to maybe enjoy at least this little break in the weather that we've had, during part of this week, especially yesterday and today. And anyway, now, God has blessed us with the breath to breathe for another day, a brand new day, a day that we've never crossed before, a day of opportunities. And I certainly hope and pray that this morning finds you feeling well. Hope it finds you well rested and ready to, ready to tackle the opportunities that God has richly blessed us with. This morning, I want to share a devotional with you entitled Two Kinds of Blindness. And it's over John chapter 9 and 9:25. It says, "I don't know whether he is a sinner," the man replied, "but I know this, I was blind and now I can see." Jesus and his disciples, encountered a man who, had been blind his entire life. In this 9th chapter of John, the disciples, they asked the Lord in verse 2, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? Now that may seem like an odd question about, someone who had been blind since birth. But some Jewish people, they believed that it was possible for unborn babies to sin in the womb. Now, whatever prompted their question, for the disciples, the man's blindness was an abstract theological puzzle. They had no real compassion for him. They lacked humility, empathy, and concern. Jesus did not, however. He explained that the man's blindness wasn't the result of his or his, parents' sin. In fact, the man's blindness gave God an opportunity to work in his life in a way that, sighted people would never experience. The Apostle Paul, he makes a similar point in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Paul, he had some kind of, disability or affliction, that hindered his work. He called it a thorn in the flesh. 3 times he asked God to remove it from him, and 3 times God said no. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, it says, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness." You see, our flaws and weaknesses can bring us closer to God if we look at them from the right perspective. They remind us, that we need him. They encourage us to depend on him. Jesus, he showed the power of God in this man's life and, in a hands-on way. The man's blindness wasn't an abstract theological concept to him. He spit on the ground, he made, mud with his saliva, and then he rubbed it on the man's eyes. He told him to wash off the mud in the pool of Siloam. And when the man did, he could see. The light of the world led the man out of his literal darkness. Now, you can probably guess on which day of the week that the healing occurred. The Sabbath. When the Jewish leaders heard about it, they were outraged. How dare Jesus ignore their religious rules, to change someone's life forever by giving him the ability to see for the first time? Some Pharisees, they argued that Jesus, he couldn't possibly have, been sent by God because he worked on the Sabbath. The man may have been healed of his physical blindness, but their spiritual blindness was still a huge obstacle. Now, other Pharisees, rightly argued that, an ordinary sinner couldn't perform such a miraculous healing. Now, things, got so absurd that the religious leaders, they sent for the man's parents and they tried to get him to, admit that, their son hadn't been blind at all. And the parents, carefully avoided the matter. They had been told that, anyone who even suggested that Jesus was the Messiah, would be kicked out of the synagogue. And so, the leaders, again, they sent for the formerly blind man. They tried to get him to, admit that, he'd been healed by an ordinary sinner and not the Messiah. And then verse 33, chapter 9, verse 33, it says, if this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. That's what the man replied. The outraged religious leaders threw him out of the synagogue at that point. I mean, their unwillingness, to see Jesus for who he really was clouded their judgment in practically every other area of their lives. I mean, they couldn't see or admit, the obvious. You see, their pride kept them in spiritual darkness. They had no interest in the light. And that's why we have to be careful to not allow our pride to get in the way of being able to see what God is trying to do, not only in our lives, but in other lives in this world. And so, anyway, hope that encourages you here on this Friday morning. I hope you have a wonderful day. And as always on Friday, if you find yourself close to Hydro on Sunday morning and you don't have a place to worship, come join us at Hydro First Baptist Church. We would love for you to come and worship with us. But anyway, remember, Angie and I, we love you guys, and we're praying for you. And Lord willing, I'll see you soon. God bless you.